The kiss is already happening when the screen sharpens into focus. Her hand rests flat against the man's chest, fingers splayed as if she's steadying herself. His head tilts just enough to close the last inch between them. The bed beneath them sinks, slow and deliberate, fabric creasing where knees press down. The room they're in is dim, warm, ordinary. Too ordinary for how wrong this is. The image is framed in a glowing rectangle of teal-blue light. Data scrolls along the edges in a language no one in the room bothers to read. A timestamp blinks in the corner. A silent witness. Behind the glass, a man stands perfectly still. The control room smells faintly of metal and recycled air. Monitors line the walls, each one alive with movement from somewhere else. Corridors, elevators, empty rooms, but none of them matter. Not like this one. The light from the screen washes over his face, catching the hard edge of his jaw, then curling up the side of his neck. His suit jacket is still on. He hasn't loosened his tie. No one speaks. Two guards stand a few steps back, their boots planted wide, hands folded in front of them. They don't look at the screen anymore. They look at him, waiting, measuring their breathing to his. On the monitor, the kiss deepens. Not frantic, not stolen in haste. It has the shape of familiarity, of choice. The man watching does not blink. A low hum fills the room as the servers adjust. A soft mechanical sound that feels too loud in the silence. Somewhere a small fan clicks on. The world keeps functioning, indifferent. The woman on the screen pulls back, just slightly. Her eyes close for a fraction of a second before she leans in again. There is hesitation there, if you know how to look for it. There is also resolve. That is when something tightens in the watcher's chest, not enough to show, not enough to change his posture, just enough to register. He has seen violence play out on screens like this before. He has watched men beg, watched fear strip people down to whatever truth they have left. This is different. This is quiet, intimate, private in a way violence never is. Forbidden doesn't even begin to cover it. The bed creaks softly as weight shifts. The man on the screen reaches for her waist. She doesn't stop him. One of the guards swallows. The sound is sharp in the room. The watcher lifts a hand. Not in anger. Not fast. Just a single finger raised, slightly, precise. The feed freezes. The kiss is trapped mid-breath. Her lips are still parted. His hand is still curved against her side. The moment hangs there, preserved and merciless, like an insect in amber. Silence expands to fill the space it leaves behind. For a long beat, nothing happens. Then the man lowers his hand. He doesn't look away from the frozen image. His eyes track details instead. The angle of her shoulder, the familiarity in the way she leans in, the fact that she is not afraid. Not here. Not now. Confirm location, he says. His voice is calm. Too calm. Safe house. One of the guards answers immediately. The word lands wrong in the air. The man exhales through his nose. Slow. Controlled. The kind of breath taken by someone deciding how much damage to allow. He steps closer to the screen. The light sharpens the lines in his face, carves shadow beneath his cheekbones. For a moment, it almost looks like regret. Or memory. It's gone before anyone can be sure. He reaches out and taps the glass lightly once, as if knocking on a door no one on the other side knows exists. She doesn't know. One of the guards says quietly. It's not a question. The man doesn't answer. He straightens, turning away from the frozen intimacy as if it no longer deserves his attention. The other monitors flicker at the edge of his vision. Routes, doors, cameras already adjusting. Bring her in, he says. A pause. Alone. The guards hesitate for half a second, just long enough to feel the weight of what's coming. Yes, sir. As they move, the man remains where he is, facing the darkened screen. The image stays frozen, untouched. He does not react the way everyone expects. And that is when dread finally settles in, heavy and certain. Because whatever comes next will be worse than rage. The building exhales. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a subtle shift in pressure. Like a deep structure adjusting its weight. Doors unlock and relock without being announced. Elevators pause on floors they don't usually stop at. Somewhere below, a car engine turns over, then dies, then turns over again. The man in the control room does not give another order. He doesn't have to. A message moves through the system without sound. It isn't written. It isn't spoken aloud. It travels in glances, in hands touching earpieces, in the way men straighten their jackets and stop asking questions. The machine has felt this before. It knows the posture to assume. On the frozen screen, the woman's face remains inches from the man she's kissing. Her expression is open, unguarded. The watcher turns his back on it. Now, he says quietly, that is all. The guards move. Their footsteps are soft against the polished floor, rubber soles absorbing sound. When the door closes behind them, it seals with a dull, airtight thud. The hum of the servers grows louder in their absence. Elsewhere in the building, the third man feels something change before anyone reaches him. He's still in the room where the kiss happened, standing by the edge of the bed now, adjusting his cuff as if the moment has already passed. He smiles when the door opens, expecting one thing and receiving another. No one raises a weapon. No one explains. Two men step inside. They are polite. They ask him to come with them. They don't touch him at first. He laughs once, under his breath, unsure what kind of test this is. Then he sees their eyes. The smile fades. He follows. Down a corridor he's never walked before. Past a service elevator that doesn't stop where it should. The air grows cooler, cleaner. The smell of disinfectant replaces the faint warmth of the room he left behind. When the doors open again, he steps out into a space with no windows and no markers. He asks where they're going. No one answers. By the time he realizes he is no longer part of any conversation, it's already too late to matter. Above, the woman feels the absence before the knock comes. She's sitting on the edge of the bed now, palms pressed flat against the mattress, grounding herself in the texture of the fabric. The room feels wrong without him. Too quiet. Too still. Her breath catches when she notices the door hasn't reopened. She stands. The knock is firm. Professional. Not angry. When she opens the door, there are 4 men in the hallway. They don't crowd her. They give her space. That, more than anything, sends a chill down her spine. Please come with us, one of them says. No accusation. No explanation. She looks past them down the corridor, searching for something. Someone that isn't there. Her throat tightens. She nods once and steps forward, pulling the door closed behind her. The sound echoes longer than it should. As they walk, she notices the details. The way they position themselves around her, careful but deliberate. The way one of them checks his watch and then doesn't look at it again. The way the route they take avoids populated areas, avoids cameras that aren't theirs. Time is compressing. She can feel it. In the control room, the man finally sits. He leans forward, forearms resting on his thighs, hands clasped loosely together. On the darkened screen, his reflection stares back at him. Controlled, unreadable, already too far gone to pretend this can be undone. Someone steps into the room and stops a careful distance away. She's on her way, the voice says. Alone, he asks. Yes. He closes his eyes for half a second, just long enough to feel the weight settle fully into place. When he opens them, his gaze fixes on the door, and the waiting becomes unbearable, because no one yet knows whether bringing her in alone is an act of mercy or preparation. The door closes behind her with a muted click. The room is smaller than she expects. No windows. A table centered beneath a soft overhead light. 2 chairs set opposite each other, neither positioned as an invitation. The air smells faintly of clean fabric and something metallic underneath, like a hospital corridor scrubbed too often. He stands at the far side of the table. Up close, the stillness around him is heavier. His suit is immaculate, dark against the pale walls. The tattoo at his neck disappears beneath the collar now, only a hint of ink when he shifts. His hands rest loosely at his sides. No weapon visible. No need for one. She stops just inside the room. For a moment, neither of them moves. Her pulse is loud in her ears. She keeps her face neutral, shoulders back, chin level. Fear flickers anyway, quick and sharp, but it doesn't own her. Not yet. She has learned how to hold herself in rooms where men decide whether you leave alive. He watches her with an expression that gives nothing away. You can sit, he says. His voice is calm, unforced. She hesitates for half a second, then takes the chair opposite him. The metal legs scrape softly against the floor. She folds her hands in her lap, fingers interlacing tightly enough that her knuckles pale. He doesn't sit. That, more than anything, tells her who is in control. I saw it, he says. No preamble, no explanation. The words land between them and stay there. She inhales slowly through her nose, lets the breath out even slower. Her eyes don't drop. They don't widen either. If he's watching for denial, he won't find it. Yes, she says. The silence that follows stretches, elastic and deliberate. Somewhere beyond the walls, a distant door opens and closes. Footsteps pass. Time keeps moving, whether either of them wants it to or not. He takes a step closer to the table. Not aggressive. Intentional. You understand what that looks like, he says. It isn't a question. She nods once. A small movement. Controlled. I do. Her voice doesn't shake. That surprises even her. He studies her now the way one might study a puzzle that doesn't behave as expected. His gaze is steady, precise, taking in the way she holds herself, the absence of panic in her posture. He has seen fear. This isn't it. This is calculation braided with something else. Regret, maybe. Or resolve. How long, he asks. She shifts in her seat, the fabric whispering under her weight. For a second, it looks like she might ask what answer he wants. Instead, she chooses honesty, measured and incomplete. Long enough to know this conversation was coming. The corner of his mouth tightens. Not quite a smile. Not quite anger. You're calm, he says. I'm paying attention. Another silence. This one heavier. He glances toward the door. Just a flick of his eyes. The gesture is small, but she notices it. She feels it. A reminder that this room is not isolated. That people are waiting. That whatever decision forms here will ripple outward fast. They're asking me what to do, he says, looking back at her. Right now. The pressure sharpens. She feels it settle into her chest, a countdown without numbers. She adjusts her hands, then stills them again. When she speaks, she chooses each word carefully, like stepping across glass. I know what this looks like, she says. And I know what you think it means. He says nothing. But if you believe this is just about betrayal, she continues, quieter now, then you're already missing something. His eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, in focus. Am I, he asks. She meets his gaze, and for the first time, something flickers across her face that isn't control. It's brief, gone almost as soon as it appears. A crack of urgency. Yes, she says. You are. The silence that follows is different. Not stretched. Suspended. He doesn't move. He doesn't press her. He simply looks at her, as if recalibrating the shape of the problem in front of him. Outside the room, time keeps tightening its grip. Inside, fear begins to give way to something worse. Unease. He doesn't answer her right away. Instead, he moves. Not toward the door. Not closer to her. He circles the table slowly, footsteps measured, the faint sound of leather soles against the floor marking time. She tracks him with her eyes without turning her head, shoulders still squared, spine straight. It's a posture he recognizes. defensive but disciplined. When he stops, he's close enough that she can smell him. Clean soap, faint cologne, something sharper underneath. She inhales without meaning to, then stills, as if she's caught herself doing something intimate. Her hand shifts. It's small, almost nothing. Her fingers slide from where they're clasped together and flatten briefly against her abdomen. Palm pressing in, a grounding gesture more than a protective one. She seems to realize it a second too late and pulls her hand back to her lap. The movement hits him like a knuckle to the ribs. His breath catches, not visibly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but something inside him stutters. A memory tries to surface, and he pushes it down on instinct, the way he's always done. For a beat, the room goes very quiet. "You do that," he says, before he can stop himself. She looks up at him, confused. "Do what?" He doesn't answer immediately. His gaze stays fixed on her hands, now tightly interlaced again, knuckles whitening. "That," he says finally, "when you're cornered." Her brow furrows. She opens her mouth, then closes it again, unsure how to respond to something that feels too personal for this room. "I didn't realize," she says. Another silence settles in, thicker than before. It's not hostile. It's uncomfortable, the kind that presses at old wounds. His mind slips, just for a moment. A narrow hallway flashes behind his eyes. Dim lighting. The smell of damp concrete and blood. Someone smaller standing in front of him, back pressed to a wall, hands held exactly like that, flattened against their own body, instinctively shielding something fragile. He remembers the weight of the choice then, the way duty wrapped itself around his throat and tightened, the way innocence looked at him and waited. The memory cuts off abruptly, unfinished, like a film reel burned through mid-frame. He straightens, jaw tightening as he locks it away again. She watches the shift happen. She doesn't know what it means, but she knows it matters. His stillness has changed. There's something sharper under it now. Something unsettled. "You said I was missing something," he says. "Yes." "What is it?" She hesitates. The guarded empathy that crept into her expression hardens into caution again. She glances toward the door, then back to him. "This isn't something I can explain in one sentence," she says carefully. "And it's not something you can unhear once it's said." He studies her face, searching for cracks for manipulation. He finds none. What he finds instead is restraint. The kind that comes from someone who has learned that truth can be as dangerous as lies. "There isn't much time," he says. "I know." Her foot taps once against the floor before she stills it. A nervous till she fails to suppress. He notices everything. "You're not asking for mercy," he says slowly. "And you're not begging." "No." "Then why stay?" The question hangs between them, unanswered. She draws a breath, then lets it out, gaze dropping briefly to the table as if grounding herself in its solid edge. "Because leaving would be easier," she says. "And easier would be dishonest." Something in his chest twists at that. Not pain. Recognition. She looks back up at him, eyes steady now, and for a fleeting second she reminds him so much of that half-remembered figure from his past that it makes his stomach tighten. He doesn't like coincidences. He steps back from the table, creating distance again, as if space might help him think. "You remind me of someone," he says before he can stop himself. Her expression flickers, surprise, then guarded curiosity. "Someone important?" she asks. He doesn't answer. Outside the room, the waiting stretches thinner. Inside, a connection forms that neither of them understands yet, and it makes the air feel wrong. He turns toward the door, mind racing not with anger now, but with questions. And the most dangerous one of all settles in quietly. Has he seen her before, or has he seen her kind of choice? He doesn't leave the room. He thought he would. Step out. Let the silence do the work. Remind her that decisions are being weighed elsewhere. Instead, he turns back toward the table and finally sits. The chair gives a quiet creak under his weight. The sound feels loud. She watches him carefully, as if the act of sitting has changed the rules. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The overhead light hums softly. Dust motes drift through its cone, slow and lazy, indifferent to what's happening beneath them. The smell of clean fabric lingers, mixed now with something warmer, human, contained. You asked why I stayed, he says. She nods once. This is why I don't forgive easily, he continues. His voice is steady, but something has shifted under it. Not anger. Exposure. She doesn't interrupt. When I was young, he says, then stops. The pause stretches. He presses his thumb against the edge of the table, feeling the grain beneath his skin, as if anchoring himself to the present. I learned early that fear travels faster than kindness. Her posture softens without her meaning to. Not sympathy, attention. There was someone I was responsible for, he says. He doesn't name who. He doesn't need to. Smaller. Quieter. Everyone else saw weakness. I saw risk. The room seems to contract around the words. They wanted obedience, he continues, and they were going to get it one way or another. His gaze drifts unfocused, landing somewhere beyond the walls. The memory pulls at him now, clearer than before. A younger version of himself, standing in a space that smelled like oil and damp concrete. Raised voices, a choice presented without ceremony. I understood that if they feared me, he says, they would stop looking past me. She swallows. The sound is small. So I let them, he goes on. I let them believe I was worse than I was. I did what I had to do, loudly, publicly. I made sure the message stuck. The silence that follows is heavy, respectful. It worked, he says. They never touched him again. Him. The word lands like a stone dropped into water, ripples spreading outward. But it cost me, he adds. She leans forward, slightly now, elbows hovering near the table, but not touching it. Her eyes don't leave his face. Once people fear you, he says, they stop believing you can choose differently. Mercy looks like weakness. Silence looks like calculation. And betrayal, he exhales slowly. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It proves them right. She absorbs that, the shape of it settling into her chest. That's why this matters, he says, finally looking at her again. Not because of pride, because every time I hesitate, every time I choose not to crush something immediately, I gamble with more than my own life. Outside the room, a faint vibration hums through the floor, machinery shifting, vehicles repositioning. The countdown tightens another notch. She nods slowly. I understand that more than you think. He studies her, searching her face for contradiction, for performance. He finds neither. Instead, he finds something that unsettles him more. Recognition. You didn't stay because you thought I'd be kind, he says. No, she replies. I stayed because I thought you'd listen. The admission hangs between them. He doesn't know what to do with that. He pushes his chair back slightly and stands again, pacing once, then stopping with his back to her. His reflection stares at him from the smooth surface of the wall panel. Controlled, composed, a man built out of decisions that never got taken back. When people betray me, he says quietly, I end them quickly. It's cleaner. She draws in a breath, preparing herself. He hears it, the subtle shift in her breathing, the way her shoulders square, not in defiance, but in resolve. That's why I need to tell you this now, she says. He turns. Her hand moves again, that same instinctive gesture, flattening briefly against her abdomen before she catches herself. This time, she doesn't pull it away immediately. She lets it stay there, fingers splayed as if claiming the space. His eyes drop to the movement. His chest tightens. This isn't just about what you saw, she says. Her voice is steady, but there's a tremor under it now, controlled and deliberate. And it isn't just about me. The room seems to hold its breath. If I don't say this, she continues, you'll make a decision you can't undo. He feels the familiar pull of duty, of instinct screaming for control, for finality. He forces himself to stay still. Say it, he says. She opens her mouth. And the moment stretches, fragile, irrevocable. Right before the truth that will change, everything finally steps into the light. She doesn't speak right away. Her mouth is still slightly open from where she stopped herself before, breath caught halfway between decision and retreat. The room feels tighter now, as if the walls have edged closer while neither of them was looking. He waits. That alone is a shift. She notices it, the way his shoulders settle, the way his hands stay still at his sides instead of curling into fists or slicing the air for emphasis. The power in the room hasn't vanished, but it has gone quiet, coiled inward. Listening. I didn't go to him because I wanted to, she says at last. Her voice is low, careful, each word placed like it might crack the floor beneath them. I went because I needed to breathe. He doesn't interrupt. She swallows, throat working. When I first came here, everything about my life narrowed. Where I could go, who I could talk to, what parts of myself were acceptable. She gestures vaguely around the room, the building, the invisible structure pressing down on her. You call it protection, and it is, but it's also a cage. His jaw tightens, but he stays silent. I told myself it was temporary, she continues, that if I stayed careful, if I stayed grateful, it would balance out. But gratitude turns into debt faster than you realize. She looks up at him then, eyes steady, unflinching. He was the first person who spoke to me like I wasn't an extension of you, like I existed on my own. The words land softly. They do more damage that way. This wasn't romance, she says. Not at first. It was air. A sound vibrates faintly through the wall. Voices outside, indistinct, followed by the muffled thud of a door closing. Time presses in, impatient. He shifts his weight, the leather of his shoes creasing against the floor. When he speaks, his voice is quieter than before. You could have asked for distance, he says. She nods. And you would have given it. In your way. With rules. With eyes still watching. He doesn't deny it. I needed something that wasn't negotiated, she says. Something that didn't belong to the structure. Silence stretches again. Not empty. Loaded. He moves to the table and places one hand on its surface. Fingers spread, mirroring her earlier gesture without realizing it. The symmetry catches her attention. Something flickers across her face. Sadness, maybe, or understanding. You think I don't know what that costs, he says quietly. I think you do, she replies. That's why I stayed. Outside, footsteps approach and then stop just short of the door. A presence settles there, waiting. A reminder that patience has limits. He glances toward the sound, then back to her. They're waiting for an answer, he says. And the longer I wait, the worse it gets for everyone involved. I know. If I let this go, he continues, I teach them that closeness is a weakness they can exploit. And if you don't, she says, you teach them that fear is the only language you trust. The words hang between them, sharp and true. He closes his eyes briefly. When he opens them, something in his gaze has shifted again. Not anger, not pity. Calculation mixed with something dangerously close to doubt. This doesn't end cleanly, he says. No, she agrees. It never was going to. The pressure outside the door increases. Someone clears their throat. A signal. Time is almost up. He straightens, every inch of authority settling back into place. But he doesn't dismiss her. He doesn't give the order waiting on his tongue. Instead, he asks, is that all? She hesitates. The hesitation is answer enough. Her hand moves again, slower this time, resting against her abdomen with intention. She doesn't look down. She watches his face as she does it, tracking the moment his eyes follow the movement, the moment his breathing changes. No, she says. Her voice is steady, but there's no mistaking the weight behind it now. There's one more thing. The room seems to tilt slightly as if bracing. He says nothing. She draws in a breath that feels like a point of no return. And it's worse than what you think. The room feels different before she says it. He senses it the way he senses shifts in a crowd, an almost imperceptible change in posture, in breath, in the way silence gathers weight instead of releasing it. His body prepares for impact, even as his mind refuses to guess. She keeps her hand where it is. Flat. Certain. No longer an accident. He watches it without meaning to. The curve of her fingers. The steadiness of her palm. The way her shoulders lift slightly as she draws an air that tastes like metal and consequence. Tell me, he says. The words come out slower than he intends. Her eyes don't leave his face. There's fear there now, unmistakable and earned, but it's anchored by resolve. She has already crossed the line inside herself. Whatever happens next, she will not take it back. I'm pregnant, she says. The sentence lands without sound. For a moment, he thinks he has misheard. The room hums softly, the overhead light vibrating just enough to distort the edges of things. His mind reaches for logic, for denial, for any interpretation that doesn't rearrange the world in an instant. Then he looks at her hand again. Understanding hits like a delayed explosion. He doesn't move. His chest tightens, breath locking halfway in. The table edge presses into his palm as his fingers curl, grounding himself in something solid. The smell of the room sharpens, cleaning solution, fabric, the faint warmth of skin. Everything feels too close. How far along, he asks. His voice is controlled. That control costs him. She swallows. Far enough that I didn't know at first. A flicker of something, anger, fear, calculation, passes across his face. It's gone before it can settle into anything recognizable. And him, he asks. The question is precise, surgical. He forces himself to meet her eyes. She shakes her head once. A small, definitive movement. No, she says. Not him. The silence that follows is absolute. The hum of the building seems to fade, as if the structure itself is holding its breath. Outside the door, someone shifts their weight. A shoe scuffs faintly against the floor. The countdown doesn't stop. It never does. His mouth opens, closes. The truth rearranges itself inside him, piece by piece, every prior judgment snapping into a new configuration. The kiss on the screen, the restraint, the way she stayed, the hand against her body. All of it takes on a gravity he hadn't allowed himself to consider. Mine, he says. It isn't a question. She nods. Yes. The word is quiet. It detonates anyway. He steps back from the table as if distance might help him breathe. His heel bumps the leg of his chair. The sound is sharp in the room. He barely registers it. Legacy. The word rises unbidden, heavy and unwelcome. This isn't just betrayal anymore. This isn't even about survival. This is blood. Continuation. A future that exists whether he wants it to or not. Every option fractures into something worse. If he destroys her, he destroys something that is already his, whether he claims it or not. If he protects her openly, he exposes a vulnerability that will be hunted relentlessly. If he hides the truth, he builds a lie so large it will eventually collapse under its own weight. He presses his fingers to his temple, then drops his hand again. He refuses the comfort of the gesture. You should have told me sooner, he says. I would have died, she replies without heat. Just fact. He knows she's right. That might be the worst part. The pressure outside the room spikes. A knock, restrained but insistent, sounds against the door. Once. Then nothing. They are out of patience. He turns toward the door, then stops. His reflection stares back at him from the polished surface. Powerful, controlled. A man who has always believed there was a right move if you were willing to make it. For the first time in years, he can't see one. Do you know what you've done? He asks, more to the space between them than to her. Yes, she says. Her voice wavers now, just slightly. And I did it anyway. He looks at her again. Really looks. She isn't pleading. She isn't demanding. She's braced for whatever comes next. carrying the weight of a choice that has already been made inside her body. This changes everything, he says. I know. Another silence. Longer. Dangerous. The future presses in from all sides, sharp and unforgiving. There's no path that doesn't leave scars. No decision that doesn't cost blood, loyalty, or truth. Outside the door, someone calls his name softly. A reminder. A warning. He doesn't answer. He stands in the center of the room, caught between the instinct to crush the problem and the instinct to protect what is his, realizing too late that those instincts are now at war. And the question settles in, cold and paralyzing. What does power do when every possible choice is wrong? The knock comes again, sharper this time. No patience left in it. He exhales once, slow and controlled, then lifts his head. Whatever war is still raging inside him doesn't reach his face. When he turns toward the door, authority settles back into his posture like a tailored coat. Give me a minute, he says. The voice on the other side hesitates, then retreats. Footsteps fade. He turns back to her. The air between them is brittle now, stretched so thin it hums. She stands where she is, hands lowered at her sides, spine straight, eyes steady. She looks like someone bracing for impact, not hoping, not bargaining. Waiting. This is how it's going to happen, he says. He doesn't ask if she's ready. You will leave tonight, he continues. Not through the front. Not under your name. Her breath catches. She nods once, accepting the shape of it. There will be records that say you never existed here, he says. Your work, your access, your connections gone. Anyone who asks will be told you were reassigned months ago. Anyone who presses will be reminded not to. A life erased without blood. The cleanest cut he knows how to make. She listens without interrupting, absorbing each word like coordinates being burned into memory. The man, she says quietly. His jaw tightens. He's already gone. Dead. No, the word comes out clipped. Invisible. She exhales. Relief flickers across her face before she can stop it. He notices. He catalogs it. It will matter later. You won't contact him again, he says. And he won't contact you. That line is finished. She nods again. There are tears in her eyes now, but they don't fall. You will be protected, he continues. From a distance. Enough to keep you alive. Not enough to draw attention. And the child, she asks. The word lands carefully. He feels it anyway. He doesn't answer right away. The child will be safe, he says finally, as long as no one knows what it is. Who it is. She understands the correction without it being spoken. She steps forward then, just one pace, stopping herself before crossing whatever invisible boundary still exists between them. This isn't mercy, she says. No, he agrees. It's containment. Silence settles again, heavier than before. The overhead light hums. The building waits. You won't see me again, she says. It's a statement, not a question. He doesn't respond. She studies his face, searching for something. Regret, tenderness, permission. She finds none of it. What she finds instead is resolve layered over grief, so deeply it barely shows. That's how you keep control, she says softly. Yes. And that's how you lose people. The words hang between them. Dangerous and true. He turns away first. It's the only concession he allows himself. When he speaks again, his voice is colder. Official. You have 15 minutes, he says. Someone will take you where you need to go. She nods. Her hand lifts once more, resting briefly against her abdomen. This time she doesn't hide it. She lets him see. For what it's worth, she says, I never wanted to be your weakness. He closes his eyes for half a second. When he opens them, the moment has passed. Go, he says. She leaves without another word. The door closes behind her with a soft finality that echoes longer than it should. He stands alone in the room, the weight of the decision settling into his bones. There is no undoing it. No version of this where everyone survives intact. A moment later, the door opens again. His lieutenant steps inside, careful, alert. It's handled, the man says. Yes, he replies. The others are waiting. Tell them it's resolved. And if they ask how? He meets the lieutenant's eyes. The answer is already spreading through the building, carried on posture and tone and silence. Tell them the structure holds, he says. And that's all they need to know. The lieutenant nods and leaves. The machine exhales. Routes reopen. Conversations resume. Order settles back into place, seamless from the outside. He remains where he is. In the quiet that follows, something fractures beneath the surface. Trust, perhaps, or certainty, or the illusion that control and protection can ever coexist without cost. The organization survives, but somewhere down the line, something essential has just been bent too far. And when it finally breaks, it won't announce itself first. The building settles into its routines with practiced ease. Doors open when they should. Cars arrive and leave on schedule. Messages move through the hierarchy, clipped and efficient, carrying a version of events that leaves no loose ends. From the outside, nothing looks different. That is the point. Inside, people adjust. Eyes linger a fraction longer before sliding away. Conversations lower when he passes, not out of fear, out of calculation. The structure still holds, but the way it holds has changed, tension redistributed along new fault lines. In the corridors, men who once spoke freely now choose their words with care. Loyalty remains, but it has thinned, stretched over questions no one dares to ask aloud. They sense that something has been spared instead of crushed, and mercy, however distant, unsettles them more than blood ever did. He notices all of it. From his office, he watches the city through a wall of glass. Neon flickers to life as evening deepens, reflected in the polished surface of his desk. The smell of coffee gone cold hangs in the air. He hasn't touched it. A report waits open in front of him. He reads it twice without absorbing the words. Numbers, routes, projections. Proof that the machine is running smoothly again. His phone vibrates once. He looks at it, then sets it face down without answering. The silence that follows is not empty. It's crowded with absence. Somewhere far away, a car merges into traffic under a different name. A woman sits in the back seat, watching streets blur past, one hand resting protectively against her body. He doesn't know where she is. That ignorance is deliberate, necessary. The organization calls it resolved. He calls it contained. Late that night, he walks the floor alone. The overhead lights hum softly, casting long shadows that stretch and dissolve as he passes. He stops in front of a window overlooking the lower levels, training spaces, storage rooms, areas where new faces move under old rules. A young man laughs somewhere below. The sound echoes up, sharp and fleeting. It reminds him, unexpectedly, of a narrow hallway and a smaller figure pressed against a wall, hands flat against their own body. The memory surfaces and recedes again unfinished. He turns away. In the days that follow, stability hardens into something that almost feels like normal. Meetings resume. Decisions are made. Enemies are watched. Allies are reassured. The structure breathes evenly. But there are moments, small, telling ones, when the cracks show. A lieutenant hesitates before delivering bad news, gauging his reaction more carefully than before. A guard avoids his eyes after mentioning a family matter. Trust hasn't vanished, but it has learned to keep its distance. At night, when the building quiets, he stands alone in rooms that once felt invincible. He listens to the low mechanical sounds, the whir of ventilation, the faint click of systems resetting, and wonders when control stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like isolation. He knows this isn't over. Nothing that's buried this carefully ever is. Somewhere down the line, someone will notice an absence that doesn't match the records. Someone will follow a thread too far. A child will grow, questions forming long before answers are allowed to exist. He rests his hands on the glass and looks out at the city again, at the countless lives moving through it unaware of the decisions that shape their paths. The structure holds. For now. And the question he doesn't allow himself to speak lingers in the quiet, unanswered, and persistent. When the truth finally surfaces, years from now in another form, will it destroy everything he built or the only thing he tried to save? Morning arrives without ceremony. Light creeps across the city in thin bands, catching on glass and steel, pulling the night back inch by inch. From the highest floor of the building, the horizon looks calm, ordered, predictable in a way his life no longer is. He stands alone in the control room. The monitors are on, as they always are. Corridors, streets, empty rooms waiting to be filled. He doesn't sit. He doesn't touch anything. He simply watches the soft pulse of the system breathing itself awake. One screen remains dark. He leaves it that way. The reflection, staring back at him from the black glass, looks older than it did days ago. Not weaker, altered. The lines around his eyes have deepened, carved by decisions that won't announce themselves until much later. Someone knocks at the door. A brief, respectful sound. He doesn't answer. The knock doesn't come again. He turns away from the monitors and walks to the window. Below, traffic begins to thicken. Lives intersecting without knowing why certain paths exist at all. Somewhere among them is a future he cannot follow, cannot name, cannot claim. He presses his palm to the glass. The memory returns uninvited, hands flattened against a smaller body, a promise made without words. Protection through fear, safety through sacrifice. He chose that once. He chose it again. This time it costs him more. He imagines a child years from now, standing in a room much like this one, or far from it, learning how to read silence, learning when to speak and when to disappear, learning that power is not always loud, and mercy is never free. He doesn't smile. Behind him, the hum of the building continues indifferent. The organization remains intact. Routes are secure. Names align with records. From the outside, the structure is flawless. Inside, something has shifted. He knows it in the way his body holds tension now, lower and constant. In the way restraint feels heavier than command. In the way he understands, finally, that control doesn't end consequence, it delays it. He straightens his jacket, smoothing the fabric with habitual precision. The gesture feels hollow and necessary, all at once. A phone buzzes softly on the table behind him. He lets it buzz. The sound fades, leaving only the quiet rhythm of machines and the distant city beginning its day. Somewhere else, under a different sky, a woman wakes and places her hand where life gathers. He doesn't know if she thinks of him. He doesn't know if she ever will again. That, too, is part of the price. He turns back to the room and, after a moment's hesitation, reaches out. His fingers hover over the controls, then lower. One screen flickers to life. Not surveillance, not footage, just a live feed of the city as it is. Unfiltered, moving forward. He watches it in silence. Power remains where it has always been, coiled and ready. But it no longer feels untouched. It bears the mark of a choice that cannot be erased, only carried. Outside, the city brightens. Inside, he stands still, understanding at last that mercy, once chosen, does not end the story. It simply waits. And somewhere in the quiet space between what is protected and what is hidden, the future gathers itself, patient and unseen.